Having a good night tonight. Yes, sirree, Bob. Okay. I'm just waiting for those numbers to start clicking. All right, folks. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. This is Doc Skinner with 1028 live on this special Saturday edition. It is 5:10 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, 4 p.m. Pacific Time on December 19th, 2020. And I got a very special guest with us tonight. I have with us Jeff Harman, and he's pretty cool. You're gonna learn a lot tonight. He is what they call an astrologer, spiritual consultant, and he uses ancient wisdom for modern life. But what's really cool is he keeps the files of all his clients in the file cabinets given to him by George Carlin. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool in my book. So real quick, I know everybody's going to jump in the comments and everything, so I'm just going to say hello to everyone, get that out of the way, because I really want to jump into this. And Jeff can read your comments. I think it's on YouTube and maybe Twitch, but because we're on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Periscope, and DLive and Daily Motion tonight. So we are really just getting out there. So if he can read your questions, he can see them over there as well as myself. And just buckle your seats, folks, because you're in for one heck of a night. Ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, may I please introduce my friend, Jeff Harman.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Good to have you. So tonight we're going to be talking about, well, you're going to be talking, I'm going to be learning, and I'm so excited along with all the audience members, what this big alignment may bring in the coming days. I mean, literally 48 hours possibly, correct?
Yeah, it's going to happen right on the 21st, and it's definitely going to be powerful. I'll tell you that. This is something I've been talking about for years and years and years. Everyone was worried about the Mayan calendar, and people were saying to me, what do you think of the Mayan calendar? I said, not a thing. I couldn't come up with anything. And I think it's pretty safe to say 2020 has been a unprecedented year. I mean, when you look at it, everyone that you speak to globally, I mean, this has been insane. This whole pandemic, or we should say bleep-demic, whatever you want to add as a prefix. And, then you look at the riots, you look at this election, and then we hear the position that's going on, not only in the United States, but especially the United States because of this election. And globally, everyone is really panicked as to what's going to happen. And I know everyone I speak to is saying, my God, what is going to happen to the economy going forward? We're going to be locked down for another 100 days or 6 months, all kinds of things. So, and it's interesting how the astrology mirrors the reality of the world. Even if you don't believe in astrology, you'd say, okay, great. I don't believe in astrology. Okay, great. So then tell me why we're having this unprecedented year. We had a Saturn-Pluto conjunction literally January 15th of 2020. And then we hit a very weird condition all the way up until May. The minute that got finished, and of course, that's when the pandemic broke out, not just in the United States, but globally. And then as soon as that got finished, what do we have? The George Floyd incident. Right after that, we had the other incidents in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And here we are, had an election that nobody believes really happened the way the outcome ended up. And now, I think we're at a point where everyone's waiting to see what happens. I was just on a show, I think it was December 2nd or 3rd with Joe Roop, and I was mentioning that from the 14th forward, there was an eclipse, and that was a very powerful eclipse. And a lot of people have texted me, geez, Jeff, nothing happened. And I'm like, well, I think it may have. We're just not hearing about it on the news. And what I think is coming up here over the next month, actually all the way into March, is going to be unprecedented, what we're about to see. And you can feel it, can't you? I mean, can't you feel that energy in the air right now?
Oh yeah. Wait, here am I? There we
Yeah.
go. Yeah, I'm still learning which button. For some reason, when I click on the separation button, it won't let me do it. So it's like small or big, one or the other. No. Can you feel it? Absolutely. But
You bet.
I think a lot of people have been feeling something that could be leading up to this for years, and
Yeah.
but I feel, even though many years it was angst, getting prepared, but not knowing what the outcome was going to be. So trying to think of how to be prepared for all the different scenarios. And now I guess I just am in my life like, well, bring it on. Let's see what
Yeah.
happens.
That's where a lot of people are at. I can tell you this Saturn Jupiter conjunction happens on the 21st, which is Monday, at between 12:29 p.m. Now that's Pacific Standard Time. If you want to just subtract 3 hours, if you're on the East Coast, which would be about 9:29 a.m. To about probably 1 p.m. 1:18 p.m. It's 12:29 p.m. through 2:18 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So if you just adjust wherever you're at, Central Time would be 2 hours off. Eastern Time, of course, would be 3 hours. And of course, if you're overseas listening to this, then definitely you'd have to adjust it for your time zone. But what's fascinating about this is that it's not just happening in the sky. Well, it is, but it's also what's happening to the United States chart. And many different astrologers use different astrology for the United States, but I can show you here the one that I like to use, and there's many different people who use different times for the signing of the Declaration of Independence, but that's the one everyone feels that is the the actual signing is the Sibley chart. And there's different people who, again, like I say, look at it different ways, but let's just keep it simple. I want to show you something. This is a chart of the United States signing of the Declaration of Independence. On the inner box here, on the outer box, this is Jupiter, this is Saturn. This conjunction, which happens this Monday, the 21st of December, is going to happen within less than half a degree of the United States Pluto. For anyone that doesn't know, this little circle with the crescent almost looks like a little guy with his arms up. And the cross underneath, that is the United States Pluto, or where it was the time of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Okay. This has not happened. A configuration like this has not happened in the entire history of the United States. I went back 240 something years, beginning of, when it happened, and never have I seen this configuration. And what's so powerful about this is Pluto rules structures. I always like to say Saturn-Jupiter conjunctures are when empires rise and fall. And that's kind of the definition of it. And we have Jupiter will actually conjoin with the Pluto of the United States on the 23rd. And notice this guy up here. This is transiting Mars. And watch what happens on Wednesday, the 23rd. You'll see the moon will jump up. You can see the dates over here. This is December 21st, right? And then 2 days later, which will be Wednesday, the 23rd, watch what happens later in the day. Both the moon and Mars will leap from this guy right here. This is, for anyone who doesn't know, this is Pisces, and this is sidereal Aries. That's a strange term called Gandanta. When you leave a water sign into a fire sign. See, Pisces is water, the element of water, and Aries is fire. So plain English, this is a very powerful energy to have happen while both Jupiter and Saturn hit the United States Pluto basically all week this week. In fact, Saturn will conjunct the United States Pluto exactly on the 25th. And this might sound a little confusing to people. The reason why this is Saturn and Jupiter in the sky join on Monday, the 21st. But you have to remember the speeds of Jupiter and Saturn are very, very slow. So they are happening within half a degree of the Pluto. So as Jupiter slowly moves forward, it aligns with Pluto of the United States, and then on Wednesday the 23rd, and then on Friday the 25th, which is literally Christmas Day, right, or evening, Saturn will join Pluto. Now, what this is all well and good, and people say to me, "Okay, cool. What does that mean?" Well, my job is to kind of go back and say, "Okay, what does this mean interpretation-wise?" Right? I personally think we're going to see. I do not. Is over with. I believe we're going to see either some kind of a military action, or we're going to see either the insurrection law invoked, or something on that magnitude happen. And the reason why the power of this aspect on the United States chart would warrant that. And it's interesting because when I first started studying astrology many, many years ago, I had a lot of good teachers, but some of the really good ones always said, you can't look at astrology as predicting the future, because it doesn't. What it does is it influences the energies and the free will of the people. Their reaction to it is what happens. Well, if you go back almost 60 years, Kennedy was killed about 57 years ago. And I remember that. I was a little kid standing out on the lawn when that happened. My dad and my uncle were cleaning out the leaves in the awnings, and I remember hearing that on a little tube radio, sitting on the porch. John F. Kennedy was just killed today in Daly Square, and I'm like, wow, that's pretty amazing. And even as a little kid, I really knew the gravity of that. And I would say what we've got going on right now, when we look back at this 6 months, a year, 2 years, 10 years from now, we're probably going to say the gravity of what's about to happen may even be greater. And I'm not fear mongering here, and I don't want to, get into fear porn and all that. But I really think if the astrology symbolism is correct, the other side, meaning the Democrats, are going to oppose this like you've never seen before. And we see the handwriting on the wall. Look at the media. Fox has still yet on any of the major shows to acknowledge that not that they haven't acknowledged it. They have on some of the daily shows, but you take your two biggest shows like Tucker Carlson, and of course Hannity and the other ones, they don't acknowledge that the Electoral College has actually voted Joe Biden in as the president. It's acknowledged in some of the daily shows, and CNN has proclaimed him that. And if you look at Sidney Powell, we look at people like Lynn Wood, who just now started a lawsuit in Georgia, and the handwriting on the wall all across. I mean, most of the people listening to this show are probably going to be extremely aware of all the, rhetoric and stuff that's going on the internet. The internet's full of it right now. And I can't even keep up with the texts and emails I get every day. It's nonstop with people questioning, people asking and saying, oh my God, it looks like this is going to happen, that's going to happen. And, I don't want to contribute to that. I today just want to focus on what is the energies of astrology match this and what might be the probable outcomes of this. And I would have to say the probable outcomes look like, and I said this on Joe Roop's show a couple of weeks ago, I think hell's coming to breakfast. I really do. I don't believe Trump is going to concede. And you look at our media, we have an exceedingly dangerous setup here. I mean, never before in the history of the United States have we been where we're at. When you have the infrastructure we have combined with the media bombardment that we have. There was something Obama signed in back, I think it was in 2012 or 13, and it was the HR 4310. Now, a lot of people have disputed this. They say, oh, that's not true. But there's actually a little something inside of that called Section 1078, which kind of released propaganda to be utilized not only in the media, but in social media and many other things. And the gravity and depth of that. And I've actually had people who are really, legally minded look at stuff like this. And, nobody can give a clear interpretation. You could get a herd of attorneys looking at this and everyone would say, well, it means this, it means that. So not to get into that, because I'm certainly not qualified to give any legal interpretations, but I think that has allowed and opened the floodgates of the hatred and the propaganda that has happened in this country on both sides of the fence. When you look back, just look at CNN. It's so hateful. And you see, even on Fox, it's just nonstop war. It's like they're slinging mud balls at each other, more like fireballs. Right. And you look at the propaganda that's been imposed on the American people. I mean, people just feel, everyone I speak to, and of course I can speak for myself here too, you almost feel like enough. We don't even want to turn to the news anymore. No one trusts anything. And this is exactly what propaganda is designed to do. And when you look into some of the things like what happened in most communist regimes, like Hitler, Stalin, Mao, all this, you go back in time. This is nothing new. I think what is new is that we're seeing it in a much more high-tech way. This Jupiter-Saturn conjunction that happens on Monday, I think is ushering in a new era. And the reason why, the Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions happen every 20 years. But why is this one so different? Well, because it's shifting for the first time in 240 years into a tropical air sign. And people say, well, what does that mean? Well, see, it's really interesting. The conjunctions of the planets make a Star of David pattern as they go around the zodiac over 240 years, actually over 1,000-year period of time. And this was known all the way back to the times of Enoch. And they actually purport that the flood was known by the astrology. And many Christians will say, well, yeah, that's true, because Christ, they knew when he was coming, right? Jupiter and the moon and Venus and all that. So these astrological configurations, which are really astronomical configurations, are very, very powerful. And the people who downplay this, it's interesting how much Jack Parsons, JPL, L. Ron Hubbard, Aleister Crowley, and all these people who were involved together when JPL was created in NASA. Very interesting stuff, how esoteric the history of the United States is. If you look back to almost every person, and I don't know that everyone was, but many, and I would say probably a large percentage of the people signing the Declaration of Independence were Masons. It was well known. Benjamin Franklin was a very avid astronomer. Of course, back then they called them astrologers or astronomers, either one. It was really called astronomers. And the word astrology kind of, I think, was invented more as we got into, the 1800s. But prior to that, they were all called astronomers. And that's really what it is. And when you look at what's happening right now, because everybody's asking me, what do you think? What do you think? And I use a system called interrogation astrology. Interrogation is also known in some modern circles as horary. That's the Latinized term. It means divinational. And when I cast charts, which isn't birth charts, it isn't, anything to do with anything other than, okay, will Trump prevail on this or will Biden prevail on this? And some think I'm psychotic. They go, well, how could you possibly say that Trump has any chance whatsoever when he's been proclaimed the winner by the Electoral College? The media, at least a large portion of it, has already proclaimed him president of the United States. Of course, president-elect. The operative word there is elect. I don't think Trump's going to roll over. And I think this is, I've heard that they have seized the voting machines in the one in Frankfurt, at least. And I believe, correct. Yeah. And they deny that anyone was killed in the firefight. And I find that that's probably not true based on interrogation. And the only thing I can give you from my corner of the world is everything that I have looked at says there's some very secret and very powerful stuff that has been happening ever since the election.
Mhm.
A lot of people know about Sidney Powell. She has actually gotten her case on the docket of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is going to have to hear this. There's been a lot of rumors out there that there could be some kind of UN intervention. I can't speak to that. I don't get that the United States is going to get attacked. Here, you want to see something really cool? Let me show you
Yeah.
this. I had this up here. Let me see if I can get to. Can you see my screen right now?
Yeah, let me turn it on for you. There you go.
Okay, good.
And then what I'm
So
going to do is
this is a map. Can you see this map?
Wait, hold on. Yeah, I was trying to
Let me
make
see.
it big. Wait, so we'll make that big. All right, so
Okay,
there's
there
your
we
computer
go.
screen. Sorry,
Now, let me come back to
I'm learning all these
here.
bells. I'm learning all these bells and whistles.
Yeah, I'm with you. So this is a map of the military positioning of the Navy right now. And I saw this on a couple of shows, and I took a screenshot of it because I have actually had several clients and family members and other friends tell me that this is probably true. These are battle groups that are surrounding on the West Coast, the East Coast, and of course the Nimitz is over here. And look at the surrounding here around China. Now these battle groups are usually over here, but never very often are they positioned. They say they're not just out there. They're literally, I think there's up to 17 ships in the battle group, and God only knows how many submarines are floating around underneath.
Right.
So this is some pretty heavy duty firepower to be putting around the coasts of the United States. There's also rumor that a F-16 had crashed in northern Upper Peninsula, Michigan. And I know right where that is. I grew up in that area. I grew up just south of there in a little area called Sainer and Saint Germain. And it was miles, probably 35 miles from where that happened. And the word is it immediately got hushed. Said, oh, no, it wasn't shot down. It was a crash. But interestingly enough, the pilot's missing.
That's what I was going to say. I was told he was the first POW.
Yeah. And then there's this rumor that there's all these underground bases, and that one up in Maine might have had literally a bunker bomb put in it. And there was rumor that there was either UN troops or Chinese troops. I don't get it was Chinese, but I could be wrong. I get that it's very possible the report is true. There was some kind of troops in there, some kind of UN or something. And people would say, well, that's absurd. How could that ever happen? Well, I think we're dealing with something here far greater than just China, Russia. I think, you know, and people use these words like deep state, which is true. That's one thing to call them. But I think we have a global communistic effort right now to do things. And this would fit the symbolism of the astrology to the T. It really, really would. And it's kind of scary when you think about it.
Yeah.
Half of this country, my brother owns a construction company or an excavating company, and he's told me that he's had a number of people, like number one, people who like Case that sell heavy equipment, you know, bulldozers and trucks. And some of the salesmen are saying, if we don't sell a truck, we're not going to be able to eat. And or one guy told him that. And then I also heard that hardly any sales are being done because everyone is freezing until they know the outcome of this election. Further, yeah, everyone feels, oh my God, you know, first off, not only are we going to go into a lockdown, but when you look at the whole economic shift that's going to happen, we could see a depression unlike we've never seen before. And, you know, everyone who's happy about Biden's going to say, well, that's absurd. Biden would never do that. I don't think we're dealing with Biden here. And this is the symbolism of the astrology. It shows the very structural foundations of this country are literally, and that's what Pluto, see, Pluto rules the structures. Saturn also. Saturn and Pluto conjunctions are literally like something blocking and standing in its way. It's very brutal. It's very intense. The only hope I have here is Jupiter. Jupiter always, in fact, if you look at the glyphs of these planets, you can see Saturn is the cross over the crescent of the moon, and Jupiter is the crescent of the moon over the cross. They're actually inverted and flipped. And that comes from a very, isn't that cool? And that comes from a very ancient symbolism here. I'll show you the tree of life. Many people have seen the tree of life. All the glyphs of the planets come from the circle, the crescent, and the cross. See, and of course, we all know our heart's right about here, right? And of course, we know mom's womb is right about there, reproductive organs. So the sun is always considered to be the life force energy. And of course, life wouldn't exist on this planet without the sun. And the moon is the crucible, and the cross is the four elements of creation. And even the critics who laugh at this stuff say, well, yeah, you know, you're right. In quantum physics, we do kind of look at everything as solids, liquids, gases, and kinetics. Well, how about that? Then that kind of fit pretty close to the four elements. So all of the icons or glyphs of these planets come from the combination of the circle, the crescent, and the cross. Look at Saturn is the cross over the crescent of the moon. Jupiter is exactly flipped and inverted, the crescent of the moon over the cross. Mars, the ancient symbol, was the cross over the sun, and Venus is the sun over the cross, and Mercury's all three, the messenger, the crescent over the sun over the cross. And many people who are around Christianity will recognize thine is the kingdom, the power is Mars and Saturn when they touch the left shoulder, and the glory, of course, touching the right shoulder is, see, the Jupiter and the Venus, and Amen is at the heart chakra. And that actually, now that got changed by Rome somewhere in the 2nd through 5th century to thine is the kingdom, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost.
That's why Catholics do this?
Yeah, I can't see it because I'm on a screen share, but let me jump back over. Yeah.
You know, when someone does from their top of their head, down the middle of their chest, across their shoulders.
That's right. That's exactly where it comes from. Yeah, that's it.
I'm not Catholic, so I didn't know, but that's... Wow.
That's where it comes from. So when you come back now to the good old US of A and you go, well, wait a minute, you know, Jupiter, see, the whole world's going to get this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. That's going to happen for everybody on the planet. No question about that.
Does it mean we're all going to be angry at each other, though? I'm sorry to interrupt, but does that mean we're going to be like, because we had something that I felt like during the riots, there was this energy of just everybody was angry. I was getting angry. I had to like take a hiatus from the show.
You bet. This is really disruptive. I mean, these happen every 20 years. Why this one is so significant? And I really want to emphasize to everyone that this is no small thing. See, Jupiter and Saturn change what we call elements every 240 years. It's not exact, but it's pretty close to that, because you have to remember we have leap years. And the reason why the year that humans have created, or divided, you could say, don't exactly match the synodic cycles of a year going around. It's 365 point something odd days, you know. So it's when you talk about long periods of time, it shifts. That's why we have a leap year every 3 years, right, in the calendar. So
this is a leap year, isn't it?
I think it was last year. Yeah.
Oh, last year. Okay.
Yeah. The Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, this particular here's a better way to show you. See, if we come over here and we look at the United States Sibley chart, this is a much more complex and probably more linear way to look at it. See, you can see this is Jupiter right here. This is Saturn. This outer wheel is the transits in the sky. And this inner wheel is the United States Sibley chart, named after Ebenezer Sibley. So here's the thing. You can actually see, if you look and you eyeball right here, you can see 6 degrees, 9 minutes of Capricorn. That's Capricorn in a sidereal zodiac. It's going to literally conjoin the United States Pluto when it gets to 6 degrees, 48 minutes. Now, different astrologers might have slightly different what we call ayanamshas or positions, but in general, this is where it's at. So I can just tell you next week, and this is, you know, if anybody says, well, what does this all mean in plain English? Next week, from Monday through Friday, unprecedented energies are conjoining for the world as well as the United States of America. And I think Trump's going to make a move. And even if we don't see it on the Mind Control News, I mean, the news, you will definitely probably hear about the effects of what's happening. Trump is not going to roll over. They have evidence specifically. Sidney Powell was challenged by a company. I actually have that data somewhere. I don't need to dig it up. Many people have probably heard about it. And if you haven't, you can certainly jump on the internet and see it. They had said, this company came along and said, well, Sidney Powell, we think you're wrong. There's no way the data on the voting machines could be off. So this statistical analysis company, I forget the guy's name, did a really detailed analysis, and they said, oh my God, she's right. Even at the most conservative viewpoints, they said, there's no question Trump won the election by all the data. And again, there's affidavit after affidavit of people, flooding votes. And, of course, we see the video cameras of suitcases underneath various different tables. And there was a driver, I think UPS or FedEx, I can't remember which, had dropped off a semi-trailer loaded full of ballots. The word is they've got ballots that were printed in China and have come across the border. What we're probably going to see, whether or not we see it next week, I'm calling the 23rd as a real trigger point. I think we're going to see Trump either invoked insurrection, martial law, or something very close to that. And I think what's likely to happen is the election's going to be declared invalid, and the Supreme Court's going to have to move on this, or the 14th Amendment's going to be invoked, and the House will be forced to vote for Trump. And because there's 26 Republican states and 23 Democrat, and there's no way in or out of that. They can't make a choice. They have to vote the way it is. And that's the way the numbers work out. And here's the problem. Going back to what I said earlier, Doc, and anyone listening, it doesn't take a mental giant or an IQ above room temperature to know that we have just had probably 8 years, but certainly the last 4, of division in this country like we've never seen. There's no way out of this that's going to be pleasant, because when you look at half the country is really ticked off that an alleged fictitious election happened, or you could say a fraudulent election is a better way to say that. And the other half, wants Biden. And I don't even know if it's half, but I think it's something like that, if you want to call it that. But here's the problem. We also have the propaganda machines at full tilt on both sides of the aisle. So no matter what the outcome of this, you're not going to have a happy country. And this goes back to this whole issue of communism, socialism. I really believe, we've all heard about George Soros. We've all, he just put the new DA in Los Angeles, and that's a fact.
Wow.
And it's really saddening, because we're at a time right now where everything is so entrenched. I think this country is so compromised in so many ways. We've only just begun to hear about it the last couple of months, though others have been mentioning it for years. The military's known about it a long time. And I think that's why you're seeing, when you look at that kind of firepower positioned around the coast of the United States, and by the way, that's not the only thing. A lot of people have heard about this. There were massive troop movements inside of the United States, hardware being moved around. My brother just told me again today that I think it's either a friend or a family member. He's he can't mention a lot, but apparently he's in charge of munitions being dispensed to ships and aircraft carriers. And the word is that the munitions have just been going wild. In other words, stuff has been being shipped out like crazy. I've heard the same thing from several other completely different sources who say that troop movement, equipment carriers, personnel. I've got one gentleman I can't mention, but he basically said, we're on high alert and stuff is moving all over the place. I got a lot of people asking me, a lot of clients saying, geez, do you think we're going to get attacked? Is this UN rumor true? There may be truth to the rumor, but I don't think they're going to attack us. I really don't. I don't think anyone would win. China, Russia, they know they're not going to win in an iron war against us. It's just there's too much hardware here, and I believe there's forces above that too that would not allow that to happen. But I do believe we are in a cyber war and have been in war. I mean, I think a lot of these politicians have sold out. I hear there's been coercion. There's been literally threats. That stuff I get is probably true by the astrology. Again, I can only say, I'm not an intelligence expert or legal expert. What I do get is a lot of people calling me, texting me, etc. Clients saying, "Is this rumor true? Can you tell me about this?" And I'll cast charts, and some of them have really looked like there's a lot of truth to this, that there's some very dangerous stuff going on. A lot of politicians have been threatened, sold out. Look at Mitch McConnell, the head of the Senate. I mean, many people were really freaked out when Mitch McConnell said, well, we need to accept the Electoral College decision that Joe Biden is the president. And then he went further to even run around in the Senate to try and get the other senators to not go along with any dual electoral college votes that were cast. Many of the Republicans also duly casted in Trump's favor, just in case this is a disputed election. They've already got their vote in. And that's to be heard somewhere between the 6th and the 8th of January. And Mitch McConnell was, it makes you wonder why a Republican would not at least honor a president who's contesting the election. And again, if you turn on most of the news, everyone says, Jeff, what are you talking about? Biden's the president. He's just got to be sworn in now. The only thing I can tell you is the astrology says, I don't think, now I could be wrong, but I don't think Biden's going to be sworn in. That's what I keep getting. Things are going to disrupt it. This is not over. And I think next week is going to be a pivotal week. One more interesting thing about astrology, and let me just show you this. I've got to come over here. One of the things that's really critical that happens to us on the 31st of December, there's something, see these little guys right here? These are known as the nodes. There's the north node, which looks like this little horseshoe. It's almost like an ohm sign in electronics. And this upside down horseshoe here. These are eclipse points. It's where the sun and the moon and the earth's orbit align up. Well, guess what happens on top of this? And by the way, this is what happened right when we had the pandemic back in 2000 in January. Not that I'm saying COVID isn't real. It really, no, right. I believe it's absolutely real. Yes. But I think it has been politicized far greater. And any doctor who tries to say it, including me, gets knocked off the internet. So I'm not saying it isn't real. A lot of people have died, and it's very sad. But I would also say it has been highly, highly magnified over. And I think a lot of that is connected to this effort right now to literally, and I hate to use these words, but literally take over this whole government. Not that it almost already hasn't been. I mean, when you look at the influences that have been going on, and, I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but I really think the model of China is being utilized by these new one world orderers. And I think China's involved too. When you look at this whole scandal with Biden and his son, I mean, the fact that the only thing they're not using on us right now is a neuralizer. Remember? Right, from Men in Black. Just look over here, folks.
It's just short of that, right?
It's almost like that. And
I mean, with the TV and computers, yes, and phones now.
It kind of is. And it's really scary. And I think this is not going to end without a real intense struggle. And I don't want to sound alarmist. I keep getting, we're not going to see a foreign attack. May that be true? Because, again, we've never seen an attack on this soil, especially one that could happen like it could. I don't get that that's going to happen. I really don't. The charts keep consistently saying, no, we're not going to get a UN attack. China's not going to come rushing through the borders and blowing us up. That may be in something they're hoping they could do, but I think when you look at the kind of firepower that is in the air, the water, and on the sea, as well as in space, and in this country, I don't think that's going to happen. And if it does, God bless us, or something like that, because I can tell you it's going to be intense. But here's where I was going and why I put this chart up. We have a Kalasara Yoga. And for anyone who doesn't know what that is, Kalasara Yoga means all the planets in the sky are now on one side of the nodal axis. See, if you look at, these are exactly 180 degrees apart. In fact, here's a little better way to show you. If I just show you with this kind of a chart, this is the more standard type of, see if I can get it to work here, circular, there we go. This is more what people are used to seeing in astrology. That was Nadi astrology, by the way. And for anybody who doesn't know what Nadi astrology is a strange word spelled N-A-D-I. There's Vedic astrology itself is kind of a pop term. Its real name is called Jyotisha or Jyotish, which is a strange word in Sanskrit that means the science of the light of the soul. And I have to say, it really seems to be. You could see the life force energy, this white substance kind of going along from death to rebirth and on over the hills. A lot of people believe in reincarnation. A lot of people don't. And I can tell you, if there's one thing, in my opinion, that Vedic astrology proves, that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience. These meat suits we call bodies, yes, they start out as little babies and embryos, and they grow and they atrophy and they die. But the spirit and the psyche and the soul clearly seems to go forward. And many NDEers and other people, certainly talk about this all the time. But why I say that is it's astounding in the Nadi and Vedic astrology how you can see. I do readings for people all the time. They'll say, how did you know my dad was that way? Or my mom was that way? How did you know our house was so nice or so horrible? Or whatever it is they say. And I go, well, because it's in the chart. And, a lot of times people deify me and say, oh, my God, no. I'm like, no, you don't understand. If you understood this stuff, you would see it too. And I can tell you, it just, if you do the work and you study, just like anybody who gets good at anything, you will see, and you can see the positions of the heavens at the time we are born show the unfoldment of the path of our lives as it goes on. And yeah, it's really amazing. So Nadi astrology was the system I had up. Those are the square, well, it's not just the square chart, but they usually use square charts. Those are called Southern Indian charts. So back to what I was just saying, now you can actually see it. You can actually see this little line right here. And you can see this is Jupiter and Saturn. This is literally, watch, if I go to real time, today, of course, is December 19th. You can see how close these guys are. If I move in daily increments, and you can see, I just come along here and go in day, you can see it edging closer and closer and closer. So on the 23rd, you can actually see Jupiter's line, which is very hard to see here, but it literally lines up. For anybody who's got sharp eyes, you can see this is the United States Pluto. It's called the birth chart right here, 651.35 of longitude. And of course, Jupiter will hit that right there. See, and of course, we could play around with exactly what hour it hits it, but nonetheless, it's happening on Wednesday. Okay, and also notice Mars and the moon will jump into this fire sign of Aries here. I'm telling you, something's likely to happen next week. Even if we don't see it on the mainstream, quote unquote, media, something's likely to really come down. And I can tell you, it's really going to get manifest right at the end of this year. Why? Watch, you'll actually see here. Venus right here will move quickly past this guy. This is the moon's south node. Now watch when it does that. Okay, see it ratcheting forward? Well, right literally on New Year's Eve, December 31st of this year, Venus jumps on this side, which means all the transiting planets, except for the moon, will be in between the moon's north and south node. And people
Directly
say,
across from each other too.
yep, it's called a Kalasara Yoga. This is exactly what happened when the media burst out with, oh my God, there's a pandemic. That was last February. Of course, we knew it was manifest in January, and I think it was manifest in the fall, actually, in China when that thing got released. China just kept a lid on it. But the media broke like wildfire in February. That's when it just got shut down. If everybody remembers, and I think it's hard to forget, from February all the way since, it's just been hammer, hammer, hammer on COVID-19. And it was really intense up until May. And then, of course, the Kalasara Yoga broke in May. And we're going to have it again from this December, New Year's Day, or New Year's Eve. We have a Kalasara Yoga. This will not break. And what I mean by break, see, Mars is way back here. And if you watch, if I just go forward in weekly increments, anybody watching this video can see this. If I go forward in weekly increments, you notice Mars is ratcheting up here to that north node right here. Well, it'll cross the 26th. It's the 23rd or 26th. Yeah, I think it is the 26th. Yes, it will cross the north node. That's when it breaks. So what does this all mean in plain English? I think we're going to see some unprecedented events in the United States and quite potentially the world that are going to happen starting next week. And from the literal New Year's Eve of this year, the Gregorian calendar New Year's Eve, I always like to add that because there are many calendars, up until March 26th of 2021, we got some crazy times ahead of us. Is it the end of the world? No. But it may really alter our world by the time it's done.
Change the world as we see it. Yeah.
Yep.
Now,
really
real quick,
be major.
I've just been sitting here on my hands trying not to jump in, but I got to jump in real quick and ask.
Yeah, please.
You speak of these, major things that could happen. Can't be very specific. I get that. But are you able to know whether it's going to be natural, like maybe earthquakes from the gravitational pull of all the planets, or is it something that's just political? And
I'm glad you brought that up. Notice also, too, if we come back, we could get some real crazy weather in January, as well as potential earthquakes. The Mars, when it goes into Aries, which is happening next week, always seems to, it's a strange word. Vedic astrology, as most people know, comes from India. So there's many, many different terms in Sanskrit. And that's why you have all these strange words. There's something called Gandanta that happens. Gandanta is a really strange word that just means when a strong planet leaves a water sign. We all know what happens to fire when you put water on it, quenches it, right? Well, the minute Mars leaves that, which again is this coming Wednesday, next week, Mars will jump out of this water sign into Aries along with the moon. We're likely to see some pretty intense stuff happen. I think it's going to be more connected to this country, potentially a move that Trump announces or makes, or the military announces or makes. And if they don't announce it, I think they're going to make it. That's what I think. I think things are happening. Again, every source I can tap into militarily wise, they're telling me some major stuff's happening. Nobody will say anything, but major stuff is happening. Again, like I showed earlier, all this positioning. And I have actually had confirmation. I had a couple of people who are on the West Coast here have seen these battle groups off of San Diego. Of course, the other one is up north here, believed to be up by, I think it's somewhere off of the Washington, Oregon coast, but they're there and they're really poised. That's a lot of firepower. Those aren't just aircraft carriers. And, the United States aircraft carriers are superior to anything else on the world. I mean, we can chuck anything off those decks we want for all practical purposes. Wow. And put them in the air and put them up there fast. And they got some pretty serious hardware. So for this to be happening, and this does seem to be conferred, I can't 100% confirm it. I know the astrology does. I think that it's definitely telling us something is really up right now. And the troop movement inside of the United States and the C-130s that have been moved into Nellis, and I hear other bases as well, in Tucson too. I used to live in Tucson. A lot of hardware going on right now. So they're definitely really positioning stuff around this country for something big. Now, if something happened where it was announced next week or somewhere around the New Year's Eve, you can bet the unrest will be crazy. I mean, look at what happened with George Floyd and the other incidents. I mean, you're going to see the cities burn again. Black Lives Matter as well as Antifa especially are going to go nuts. I've heard that the military has already infiltrated them. I can't verify if that's true, but they know a lot about where they're at. And I've heard they've been stocked with a lot of weaponry. So they're pretty organized, much more so than they were before. So that may be why we're seeing all this military hardware and activity, is to position for this kind of stuff. As I really, everyone's pronounced Joe and Kamala as the president-elect. I don't think it's going to happen. Now, I could be wrong, but I don't believe that's going to happen. I really think we're about to see hell come to breakfast here in a way that's going to alter this election. There's no way Trump's walking away, not from everything I've seen and heard, including what I've seen and heard or what I see in his astrology. When you look at Donald Trump's astrology, there's just absolutely no way. I actually have his chart right here. A lot of astrologers have said, well, but Joe Biden's going to win unequivocally because Joe Biden has the moon's nodes going over his ascendant. Yeah, but it's the south node. That shows losses.
Oh.
The south node is always liberation or losses in Nadi astrology. And it's not looking like he's got some aspects that would certainly show why what's happening is happening. But when I look at Trump's chart, he's got a far more powerful chart. His transits and his cycles don't show that he's just going to, dry his eyes, wipe out his desk and go play golf at Mar-a-Lago. I'm not getting that. Everything is showing this is not done. And there's a fight about to happen.
Yeah. I'm going to jump in real quick because
Sure.
made a comment about a lot of pilots are being called in. And I'm not just talking reserve pilots, but actual commercial flying pilots with the previous military experience are being told to, walk away, come, we need you now. So, and that was a couple months ago, probably a month or two before COVID, the whole thing started with that. And a lot of people have been dealing with everything fancy free, like, oh, everything's be fine. But a lot of us other people, we know, we've been watching this, like the build of the military. I mean, people live near bases are seeing it.
Yeah. I've got direct confirmation on that.
Yeah, and I have too.
Yeah.
It's, I'm scared. I mentioned this last night. I'm a little scared of what could be, but I'm trying to live like tomorrow will still come, kind of.
Tomorrow's going to come. I really believe that.
Yeah.
I really do.
I
and again, I can't. Here's I've literally got in my hand. You can't see it, but I'm looking at charts that I've been casting. And it's basically, will the UN attack? Will we have, because a lot of people are very, very worried, and justifiably so, when you hear all these things going on. And I get no. I hope I'm right. I hope this chart is right. And the charts are usually right. What I get is some very secret, covert things are going on right now in Washington. I also get there's a lot of stuff happening with data gathering and collection of intelligence. That's what the chart indicates. Again, I don't think China, Russia, and I have heard a report. There was somebody who said out of London that there was a lot of naval movement from Russia. They were positioning out there in the Atlantic, but they haven't come that close. Again, the chart shows not likely, and may that be right, because God bless us if
right, because a lot of people are concerned that we might be entering a Red Dawn scenario.
You bet. A lot of people have, that's exactly the questions I've gotten. And again, the astrology and I'm just to clarify for people, I'm using a technique known as interrogation now. Indian astrologers call it prashna, and Western astrologers know it by horary. But I like the old terms that the rabbis used way back in Egypt and Greece and Chaldea, and it's called interrogation. Interrogation just means you're asking a question. You're literally casting a chart, just like a birth chart, but based on consciousness. And what's fascinating is they're really accurate. I mean, I do this for a lot of people where they'll say, hey, should I get in this relationship, or is this good to do, or that? And, I can't advise anybody what to do. And I never tell anybody what to do. I say, you take this information and make your decision based on it. And I have invariably found it's right on. The was if I read it wrong. I went back and went, oh my God, I didn't catch something, which I try not to do. But I would say it has been so accurate, it's creepy. And I can tell you this, again, looks like a very, very widespread military information gathering, like the NSA might be involved here. It looks like a war between intelligence operations, almost like a war between the FBI, CIA, the New World Orders, and the military. That's what it looks like. And I think that makes a lot more sense to me, because that's what the astrology says. And also it makes more sense because I don't think, again, if China ever launched an attack, it would have to be so decisive. Trust me, we would come back. China would be a glazed bowl over there, and so would Russia. Nobody'd win. And from what I've heard, the statistical data supports that. Nobody would win. I mean, we've got weaponry right now that is so creepy in every area. And I'm sure they do too. So, and I really personally believe that there are forces here, and I've heard military guys, I've actually sat in meetings at various different places over the years with Camille and I, where we've heard people say, and I mean, these are people that are really rational, and I know they were only drinking coffee, and they said, we saw light orbs around installations. Many people have heard this. It's been on open media now, and the nukes wouldn't work afterwards, or certain military hardware hasn't worked afterwards. I just was at Fox Studios here last spring and ran into a Marine. It was funny because Camille, my wife, used to write for UFO magazine, so we always get around some very interesting people. And yeah, there you go. And I've had some interesting experiences in my life in that aspect too, living in northern Wisconsin and out here. But not to go there right away, but I would say what happened is this guy came, he overheard us speaking to someone. And he said, hey, I don't want to interrupt, but he said, I want to tell you, he says, I can't tell you everything, but he says, I'm in the Marines and we're at a special unit. And we've been tracking stuff off the coast of Malibu. There's a little place called Point Doom, spelled D-U-M-E. And a lot of people might remember I Dream of Jeannie. Remember that? With Larry Hageman and wonderful, wonderful show. And the Gilligan's Island the scenes were filmed out there, not all of them, but some of them. So we go out there a lot. And in fact, when my child was growing up, Aiden, we used to take him out to the beach there all the time. Well, right off the coast there's this huge shelf. And this is military guys saying this. Not a bunch of us wacko UFO and astrologers.
You're talking about what's on Google Earth, right? It shows
that too. Yeah, Google Earth shows it. Yeah. But they have actually been tracking these crafts coming out of the water at speeds and velocities that is physically impossible. And the propagation that they hit coming out of that water is nearly instantaneous by the time they get out of the atmosphere. And, there's so many rational people that I've met who say this stuff is really real. To me, that kind of supports what the astrology says, that there's going to be a conflict here, but it's a different kind of conflict. We just heard about the breach of the whole security systems with the nukes and nuclear stockpiles and all this stuff that was alleged by Russia. I heard China might have been involved in that as well. Russia was certainly implicated. Of course, Russia's been implicated in everything. But I would say that what's comforting to me, and I say this with a fair deal of confidence, I don't get from the astrology questions that have been asked, and I've asked them myself, that we're going to be fighting Chinese or Russians off our balconies of our homes. I just don't see that.
Kind of like, what was it, 1941 with Jim Belushi or John
Yeah,
Belushi?
yeah, it was great. Yeah. And thank God. I mean, we're laughing, but boy, that would be no laughing matter if that ever happened.
No.
And I could tell you, if something like that ever happened, they would pelt this place. It would be, they'd hit the coasts. And
well, they already own Long Beach, the whole Long Beach port, right? Or
well, they did. I heard that Trump made them get rid of it. China owned the Los Angeles Long Beach harbor, or they had control of the port authority, and that was eliminated. I forget when, but I think it was somewhere around 2017 or 18, about 17 or 18. Don't quote me. A lot more people may know about that than I do, but I heard that that's true, and they don't. But they have been, I think, infiltrating this country for probably maybe many more years than we know, but certainly 20. I think it's been happening since Kennedy was killed.
And a lot of people, long-term recon.
Yeah, it's been a long-term thing. And they like China as a model. They like its model, where basically, in China, you can hear about the Uyghurs, what they're doing. If you are texting, talking, going on websites that they don't like, and we're not too far from it already, right. You will have a group of militants show up at your door at gunpoint and take you to a re-education camp.
And you can see those videos on YouTube too.
Oh yeah, and people think that couldn't happen here. You bet it could. We are this close right now, and Joe is selling us a bill of goods. Oh, it's going to be wonderful. We're going to save the planet and everything else. Okay, that's all great. We all want to save the planet, but I can tell you, it ain't Joe that's getting in. And it's really not Kamala who would get in, though Kamala will be the next woman president of the United States if Joe ever does get signed in or sworn in. And he will, because Joe, I don't think Joe's, from his astrology, if I'm reading the naughty astrology right, he's not going to be capable of performing his functionality much more than a year. In naughty astrology, he has the South Node hitting his Saturn.
So you're saying medically he's not doing so well. Medically.
That's what the chart would indicate.
Okay.
And Kamala will be president if that all happens. And again, I'm going out on a limb here to say what I'm saying. A lot of folks who will hear me say, "Oh, Jeff, you're crazy. How could you say that?" The Electoral College, Mitch McConnell, the media has proclaimed them as president-elect and vice president-elect. Well, then again, I would also say, take a real close look at what's really going on. Sidney Powell, who a lot of people brush off, has irrefutable evidence that is now sitting before the Supreme Court. That is on the docket. They can't not hear that case. That's just that. I've heard the servers and the data that the military has confiscated. The biggest one that gives me comfort on the mundane side is the 2018 executive order, EO, that Trump had signed. Yep. And everybody knows about this. And once he has that report, which now they're delaying, isn't that interesting how much power that is behind the scenes? This is what's going on right now. We've got intelligence wars between the New World Order globalists who literally want this place to turn into a socialistic hellhole where everyone goes bankrupt and everyone is controlled, and stay in your houses and don't speak or email. This show, if we're on YouTube, this show will get knocked off. Every show I've been on gets knocked off.
Yeah.
Oh, he's a radical.
That's why we're on multiple platforms at once right now. So
yeah, good luck, buddy. They'll go like this to you in about 5 seconds. You'll be gone.
Oh, it's the end of the year. It's 2020. I'm going out with a bang, so I'm bringing in like Secret Service agents, you and some others to.
That's so cool.
Off in a cherry, right?
I know you've had so many amazing guests.
Really I do. Yeah. So, now just kind of skimming over here. There was something that was asked. Looked into nope. Oh, someone asks. That's not it. Oh, the messages are moving so fast
Yeah, I see him over here. Yeah.
Here it is.
Oh, somebody wanted.
Okay,
Oh,
this
I
is,
see a lot of them. Yeah.
yeah, I saw it says, how about the Chinese that are practicing war games in Canada? You know, Trudeau's allowed a lot of Chinese over there. I think maybe that might, because I know I said it too. I said, are the Chinese possibly coming in from the north? You know, because that is, you know, they're there and they're training, and there's
They
been
are.
conflicts
They have
videos.
confiscated. Trudeau has basically given them their petrochemical industry. And I actually have a number of clients in Canada, and a couple of them have told me, two are in law enforcement, and several others have said, we have heard rumors, and one has said that he believes it absolutely has evidence that there's something called, I forget what they call it, the Trail of Death or something like that. Almost reminds me of the Indians back in the 1800s.
Yeah, that's what I thought when you said that.
Yeah.
Trail of Tears.
Trail of Tears, right. But it's like that. They call it the Trail of Death, where if people are on these roads, they literally disappear. They're gone. And they don't know if they're killing them. They don't know if they're confiscating them or putting them into whatever, you know. But the Chinese are up there, and they're in plain clothes or security clothes, but they're actually Chinese Communist Party nationals or Liberation Army people. And they're all over the place up there. And the wilderness up there, of course, is so vast. So it's very, very dangerous. And again, this is probably why we see all the firepower around this country right now and in this country. And, you know, I tell you, you know, I've said this to several people. You know, I've lived a decent life. I'm in my 60s now, and I would lay it down for this, because to lose this country's constitutional right, if this election isn't sorted out, this isn't about Trump, this isn't about Biden, this is about this country's right to, you know, I look at my son and I look at his girlfriend. I look at all these little kids playing around here, and my heart goes out to them, because you know what? I had the chance to play when I was a little kid. I was playing, you know, all kinds of stuff and running all over, and had the freedom. I used to jump on motorcycles when I was in my teens and 20s. Yeah, I'd drive across the country. No one checked my papers and ID, and you know, no one told me, oh, you can't do this or do. I mean, this is America, man, and it's a really amazing country. Every person of any race, of any creed, of any religion has a right to be here. And I can tell you, if this isn't about Biden and Harris and Trump, this is about the New World Order takeover of socialistic communism, and we will go there, is, in my opinion. That's my opinion based on the astrology. And if this is not settled, where it really, we stick to the Constitution, we're in big trouble in every area. I mean, huge trouble. This is a turning point. That's, you know, if people want to say to me, well, Jeff, what do you think the astrology really means? What I just said. If this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction happening Monday through the end of next week is literally probably the most unprecedented energies this country has ever seen, but much different. And people say, what about the Civil War and all that? Well, they're right. The Civil War was amazing, but I would say that, or a major turning point, I would say this one is much more dangerous, because this is about everybody's freedom. Everybody's freedom. So when you look, okay, that was, and thank God they did free the slaves. It's horrible. Nobody should be slaves, you know. And I mean, one of my dearest friends and business partner is African American. I just absolutely think she's one of the most amazing people, and we get along so good. We don't care what color anybody is. I don't care what color. I mean, I have so many African American friends and people that are Latino. Whatever. I don't see color. I see people, and that's what I love about this Constitution and this country. If you got a brain and you want to make something happen, you can in this country. You take that away, man, I mean, I talk to people from Russia. I talk to people who came out of Yugoslavia or various different places that have gone through revolutions. Laszlo Kovacs, the very famous cinematographer, and also, what was his name? Vilmos Zsigmond. He did the movie, Laszlo did Ghostbusters. He did, you know, they worked on The Deer Hunter together, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. You know, and Vilmos just passed away. I love Vilmos. I used to help him up on the stage. He was getting old. And he would give talks at the American Society of Cinematographers. And They knew. I mean, they told me they watched people getting, when Vilmos and Laszlo Kovacs left, what was it, Hungary? That's what it was. The Hungarian Revolution broke out, I think it was in the 60s or late 50s, and they were in film school. Well, here's a couple of guys. They got 16 millimeter cameras, and they're just out filming their work for their graduation for their film school. All of a sudden, the Russian tanks come rolling through, and they're shooting people in the streets, and they got their cameras rolling, and they turn it on. So they got all this footage of this Russian invasion. Well, then, yeah, this is a great story. And then what happened is Vilmos and you guys can look the story up. It's absolutely true. And Vilmos said, I always loved Laszlo Kovacs. He used to say, wait a minute, I got the great idea, because he had the Hungarian accent. Mm-hmm. I took classes from him at Burns and Sawyer's. Amazing man. Anyways, long story short, they escaped out of Hungary with those, and I hope I got the country right because I'm going from memory here. It's been years. And they came to the United States, and they were so happy to be here. And then they both became extraordinarily successful and famous cinematographers. And I always say cinematographers get a lot less credit than they should get. Right. Everybody, the director and the actors. Well, take the cinematographer away, and you don't have
the guy that's looking through the lens
and creating the look and working, to really make the movie magic. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what happened, and I'll just finish that story. That Laszlo, once he got to America, he said to Vilmos, he says, my mom, my girlfriend, and my sister, they're all still over there in this revolution. And Russia was just strong-arming everyone. Look, it happened to us in the next year or two. And so Laszlo went back over there with Vilmos. And apparently it was all barbed wire then, and Laszlo crawled under the barbed wire and went through the back of a church in order to get in, to the barriers that Russia had created. And Vilmos said, I ain't going. He said, I don't want to get caught. So Laszlo single-handedly crawls across the field, goes through the church, comes out, goes to the house, gets his mother, his girlfriend, and also Vilmos's girlfriend, and smuggles them all through the church, across the field, underneath the barbed wire fence, and brings them to America. Now, that's a cool story. Now, that's the kind of resolve that you see throughout history to escape tyranny, suppression, all this stuff, and I can tell you, I would die for that. I have so much respect for the people who fought wars. I've got relatives who fought wars, and I purportedly had one in the Civil War. He was a Union soldier on my grandmother's side, on my dad's side, and I might have it on my mother's too, but I only know about the one. And to me, I hate war. I really do. But when you talk about this kind of suppression that could be done, and this is going to be done if it happens in a much worse way, because every one of us are running around with one of these. Okay. When you got a cell phone, when you have internet, and everybody does, I mean, I pull up to places and my cell phone tells me, well, your car is parked here. You're only so many miles from home. And I'm going, wait a minute. If that thing's in there, and if anybody's updated their Android or updated their iPhone, guess what? You probably have a COVID tracker in there. They can track you anywhere you go. Every new car is trackable. In fact, I heard a lot of the new cars, they can just shut them right down anytime they want. Just hit a switch.
Right.
Shut you right down. And I know California's been putting in stuff on freeways that could shut cars down. They can shut you down like that. So if you're driving old vehicles, they can't. But this is, where it could go. And technology has been serpentining around us. And back to astrology. People say, well, what is the Saturn Jupiter really going to mean? I think we're about ready to hit a high-tech revolutions that's going to make us look like the Jetsons. Why? Because this Jupiter and Saturn in a tropical technology is going to explode.
But can I interject? Do you think that could be something to do with the fact that President, who's still president, by the way, for those that don't know, President Trump, he said that he was possibly going to do some disclosure. Do you think because he said something to the public about
his uncle was involved with Tesla's all the acquisition of Tesla's stuff.
Well, maybe that. Yeah. So do you think that's going to be? He's going to say, y'all think I'm going to go? Well, here, check this out. And here's all this really great stuff. And it's going to be a huge leap for us.
I think a lot of things are poised to happen like that. Yeah, I really do. You know, disclosure, often people, their mind leaps to UFOs, but disclosure, like you say, could also equal new technologies. I know the military has been using cracked hydrogen, or cracked water is what they call it, which is hydrogen, in drones for a long time. You know, I shouldn't say this on the air, but when was it? It was in the 90s. A friend of mine had a 350 Chevy. Okay, we went up the 5. We went up the, I don't know if you know where the Grapevine is out here, but it's this huge pole that you go up. All the trucks come out of there at 35 miles an hour. So we went up the Grapevine with this 350. And he says, you know what I'm running right now? I says, no. He says, opens up the hood. He had a Sears Die-Hard battery. He had a serpentine of copper and another one of aluminum. He had water in there. When you apply 65 amps of current to ionized water in a hollowed out container, like he used the battery, he said it was so flammable, he had to mist the motor down. He was burning pistons up. He said he finally got it to work. He was misting the motor. So the technologies are there. This is why, you know, the Democrats are not completely crazy when they talk about this new Green Deal. It could happen. The problem is you're going to crash the economy if you do it instantly. You know, oil will never fully go away. I mean, petrochemicals are going to be around. I mean, everything in this room is made out of petrochemicals, you know, paints, synthetics, clothing, plastic. You name it. Yeah, everything, plastics. Yeah. But I don't think we're going to just throw our cars in the garbage can and start driving, you know, hydrogen vehicles or electric. I do think that's going to happen. I think we're going to see flying vehicles. And I think cold fusion is a reality. I heard they have it. I think the military has stuff we've never heard of. And a lot of it could be alien technologies. And, you know, as many people know a lot more about this than I do. But this is what the astrology shows, is the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction is a kiss that says, okay, open the gates. It's kind of like the angels are saying, all right, new era. That's what I see.
I just thought of something, though. Okay, how is this going to affect astrology if China is successful in creating their own sun in that laboratory? Do you think?
I think we're going to see things off the charts coming forward in genetics, medicine, and in communications, technologies, transportation, space travel. I think there's things that have been around for so long that have been suppressed because it either wasn't commercially feasible or it wasn't ready to roll it out, because you would disrupt the economic structures. And I also think that astrology really marks when consciousness shifts. And I, you know, with all this doom and gloom, I actually think this is going to end up a lot better than we think. You know, I was talking about all this short-term astrology between now and next week, and of course, March of this year. You know, really the next 3 years, if I were to show you here, let me just do this again.
You have to share on your side.
Yeah, let me
picture on
share.
Yeah. All right, let me do it on my end as master controller. There you go.
Let me know when you're there. Oh, I got to allow it.
There we go. And then I turn it on my end. Okay.
Good. Okay. Yeah, the audio's coming through my headphones again. There it goes. Okay, so if we come back to this chart that I had up before, this is the United States here on the inner wheel, the outer wheel. Well, notice this guy right here. This is transiting Pluto, and this is the United States Pluto. Another way to show you this is here. The next 3 years, I can tell you, are going to be very trying for the United States and for China as well. When I look at China's chart, I didn't have it up here, but I have China's Communist Party chart. I don't think things are going to go too well for them either. See, Pluto will actually conjoin the United States Pluto. You can actually see that little circle with the line up is actually called a conjunction. And you'll notice the dashed line connects to what we call natal Pluto over here. This is called a graphic ephemeris. And the sine waves are the modulations of the direct and retrograde undulation of the planets as they go forward and direct. So if you see here, Right there, February of 2024, again, July of 2024, and December of 2024, Pluto conjuncts Pluto of the United States. That's never happened before. Why? It takes a little over 240 years for Pluto to go around the zodiac. When you make up Earth's travel, that's why it's happening when it's happening. So this is powerful stuff.
Can I ask a question before you get rid of this image?
Yeah, no problem.
This is quite intriguing. It kind of went at first when I saw it, but I'm following the lines. But I am noticing you do have this one, and I don't know what all the symbols are. It's right. I don't know. It's the only lines that are squiggly and not.
Oh, yeah, that's the node. This white stuff here?
Yes. What is that?
Yeah. That's the moon. If you look at the top, that is the moon's north node. See, the nodes squiggle back and forth. They actually move reverse. Notice they go upwards instead of all the planets undulate downwards at a very slow rate. This is called an outer ephemeris. When I say outer, this is from Jupiter out.
Okay.
In other words, we're not looking at
Mars. You mean like in its order from the sun?
Right. This is from Jupiter.
I'm trying to grasp all this. I promise.
Yeah, it's complex. It's complex. But what is nice is it gives us a little way to look at something rather than me just saying it.
Right.
I'm actually showing you the data.
Visual's great.
Yeah, the visuals are great. It's really wild stuff. It really is. And I always love to show this particular diagram. Let me show you this one. No matter what anyone's religious faith is, and you don't even have, I'm with George Carlin, the best thing that came out of all the religions was the music, right? Because though I do really believe in a lot of things that certain religions say, I think it's very, very divine and true stuff. On the other hand, when they get a little dogmatic, I have to go, well, hang on here a minute. But anyways, back to why I love this diagram. This is one of my favorite diagrams. Whatever your belief in God is, and to the atheists, I say, well, that's where you and I part ways, because I do believe God exists. So you can see God is above all things. And then there's this strange word here that's called absolute. That's an Aramaic or Hebrew word, which means emanation of divinity, or you could say emanation of God. And notice this first hierarchy is the groups of angels, the seraphims, the cherubims, and the thrones. And anybody who's been around Western Judeo-Christian religions have read in the Bible that the seraphims are believed to surround the throne of God. Now, what's interesting is even when you go into the Vedantic, the Chaldean, the Egyptians, they call them different things, but they had models very similar to this. And so whatever your belief is, that it's just you change the names. In fact, the Vedantic stuff is very, very close to the Judeo-Christian. Anyways, long story short, your soul is believed to be created right about here. Okay, there's no astrology up here. There's no heavens or astronomy or anything else. And this is exceedingly divine. They say there's 49 dimensions and 49 subdimensions here. Just absolutely inconceivably vast. The next worlds down, Braya, is called creation. So the absolute means emanation or divinity, is some of the synonyms.
That's the inner circle of angels and stuff.
Well, it's certainly the upper circle, or you could say the upper worlds of angels. Yes, which encircle God, right?
Our VIP pass won't work there.
Right. Yeah, right. Yeah. Though they say having a soul is a pass, but that's what they say. And this is extremely divine. Braya is the worlds of creation. And they say there's 49 dimensions and 49 subdimensions beneath that. And this is where all the metaphors, like we hear the waters and the angels, the dominance, the virtues, and the powers. The waters is one synonym for angels, are there. It's way down here called the worlds of Yetzirah. In fact, anyone who's been around some of this esoteric stuff has probably heard of a book called the Sefer Yetzirah. Sefer means book in Hebrew. Yetzirah means formation or creation. So you have emanation of God, creation, and formation. This is where the rotating galaxies are. I gave a talk once at Edgar Mitchell's IONS, Institute of Noetic Sciences. That's why I created this diagram for, and I've loved it ever since. It's not my diagram. It's one you can find very much in the creational models of many of the spiritual realms. I just kind of modified it for this. So Yetzirah is where the rotating galaxies, the universe is.
So that's our dimension.
Well, it's our dimension is way the heck down here. We're here on Earth.
Oh, okay.
But yes, and you're right. This universe, now this is one that'll really bend your mind around. They say there are 49 parallel universes and 49 sub-universes in each one.
So is it like a cosmic book in each of these areas
you might say that
pages? Because I just, what could be different? I mean, all of these dimensions, just one dimension.
It's mind-boggling. It's
right.
way past my ability to fully comprehend. I can tell you that.
Sorry, teacher. I'm just trying to grasp it.
No. I'm glad you're mentioning it because it's absolutely mind-boggling. I mean, it's like the Twilight Zone.
Right.
I mean, any scientist will tell us these galaxies are sometimes they could be billions of light years away just in the one dimension.
Or just be as small as a ball, like in like you said, Men in Black with a little cat collar. There was the universe in the ball.
God only knows. I'm just reporting what I believe is the structures, and this is one way for our myopic minds to get our, kind of 5 sense, 3-dimensional reality brains around, So just to give you an idea, they say the Milky Way could be way down here. And of course, our solar system is right on the edge of this line. And then you have the last worlds, which is called Asea. Asea is a word used for action. They say this is where the angels, the spirits, the demons, the disincarnate souls known as dead people, aliens, you name it, seem to all mix it up. This is the astral planes. Yes. And here's another one for you. They claim 49 dimensions and 49 subdimensions.
Can I ask you to zoom in on that with your little, because
yeah, sure.
So we can read all the little, because it's really small on the screen.
Oh yeah, that's really small. Well, and there's so many of these. I mean, I could show you many, many more, but see, you can see, abode of the zodiac is right here. See, abode of Jupiter, abode of the sun. It's a little hard to read. Abode of Mars.
Means what?
Abode, meaning the house of, or you could say the domain of. It's like the abode, the word abode, A-B-O-D.
Okay.
And then as you go down here, you can see there's Mercury, that is Venus, this is the moon, and of course, this is the sun. Many people will recognize this as the 32 paths of the tarot, which is, again, and then you also have the major arcana, and of course, these are called spheres or, vessels of divinity condensing themselves. And again, most of the ancient astronomers and astrologers are not like modern astrologers. That's what attracted me to the ancient world of astrology. It's very spiritual and it's very divine. And that's why I always say to people, if your soul is created way the heck up here and the heavens themselves don't even form until, hundreds of dimensions below, and then, you're sitting here on this planet, I think Vedic astrology is right. We're spiritual beings incarnate. We are literally here experiencing this world. Every one of us will die. There is not a single person on this planet who's not going to experience death. Well, talk about the magic of Vedic astrology. In fact, this is known, many people have heard in the Bible, the section Exodus, which of course is one of the books of the Torah, you could say the first 5 books of the Old Testament. Well, Exodus has something many people have heard of, and it's known as the Shem HaMephorish. People in magical circles have heard of it as Goetia, and they know this is also known as the Greater and Lesser Keys of Solomon. We hear of Queen Elizabeth and John Dee and the Masons and the Knights Templar and all these secret societies, right? And even the Christian mystics know that there is a lot more going on than what the church is trying to tell us, right? Particularly the bearded men who are murdering each other about 1,500 years ago to put in the doctrines in the churches that now exist. So I'm not saying what is there isn't true, but what I am saying is they altered a lot. They threw the doctrines of reincarnation out the window. Well, where I'm going here is the 72 angels are embedded in ciphers encrypted in the Aramaic and Hebrew in the 3 verses of Exodus. And they are also ruling the quintessences of the zodiac surrounding the Earth. This is pretty heavy duty stuff. And here is a lunar zodiac that's, as you can see, this is the Earth and this is the moon. These are known as the 27 lunar mansions. And I can tell you, if anyone takes the time to study this stuff, or what I use it in readings, it's so accurate, it's creepy. It's every child who is spanked on the rear end literally starts the clock for that soul. And you will exit the plane of what we call death, or exiting the body, when your karma is completed. And I really, am not a superstitious person, nor am I one to give into, outlandish beliefs. But I have to say the data on this is just blows your mind when you really look into it, how accurate it is. We will all die. We will all exit the body when the moon's north and south nodes match up in our charts by progression and transit. I've seen it hundreds of times. It's so astounding. It's absolutely amazing. But we're getting a little far off the track, but it's cool stuff because this also kind of comes back full circle to the present day world. Is the world going to end? I really don't believe it will.
No, it's just the way. It's just life as we know it will change. That's all.
But it's always changing.
Yeah, it's always changing.
It's always changing. I mean, people, they've been marching them out to meet the Messiah for thousands of years. And they have, and they're always, it never happens,
Yeah.
So, I have texts that are really interesting, where these astrologers would say, and the year of our Lord Jesus is coming, and they'd march them all out to the field and sit there and wait, and nobody came, and they're still sitting there from what I hear. But the long story short is, and not to make fun of any of that, but I really believe that we're seeing a time of great altercation.
Didn't you have a chart that you showed me where it looked like a star in a circle, but it was all on one side for the 21st? Oh, that was an image I think I wanted. Or did you already show that? I don't think you did.
Know. I don't know which one you're talking about.
It was a circle.
You're talking about this one? Oh, is it this one here?
No, it was it was one of your normal charts, but it showed how everything was off to one side.
Oh yeah. That was the you were looking at the Kalasara Yoga, right? That's this guy right here. Or if you wanted to see it another way.
Well, yeah, it was a different way. It had the lines going across. It looked like a star that was smashed in a circle.
I don't know which one you're talking about. But yeah, I mean, here we could see it even better if I just do this. Watch, people. This is literally.
I think that's it. That's it. Yeah, you were doing the time and
there you go.
Moving the lines. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, you bet. See, watch. Here's another way. People can see the dates up here on the far right. Okay, today's the 19th, right? So if I roll forward in monthly increments, in daily increments, watch the 21st. You can actually see this. This is really a great tool because you can actually see Jupiter and Saturn, see OS01. That's degrees. That means separating. That's 1 minute of arc. So again, the conjunction happens earlier in the day. It's over with. You could see it's OA00 right there. See, that's in the morning here on this coming Monday. That is the 0 degree. If you eyeball this, you can see 0028, 0028. See, that's Jupiter.
Oh my God, there's the 28 again. I told you 28 always pops up around me.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, you were born on the 20th. So if we look here, okay, watch, you can see Venus, and I'll point here with a white arrow so you can see. Venus will go beyond the moon south node right on New Year's Eve this year. Okay, watch. So you can really see that on this chart. It's very visual. See, watch. When those degrees get past, there it is. There's your Kalasara Yoga. Now, the moon will break that every 2 weeks. So what does this mean? This is very powerful energies. And I'm going to spare you guys with all the technical jargon on astrology, but I have gone through this very in detail, looking at the nodes that the moon is in when it does that. See, these are called lunar mansions, and they have not only do they have planets that rule them, but they have very specific angelic deities and energies. And again, whether people roll their eyes at astrology or not, I can tell you it's so accurate, it's creepy. In fact, one of the ones we hit when the pandemic broke out last January into February was absolutely all. In fact, the Great Plague of 1917 had the same configurations. In fact, John F. Kennedy was killed, not exactly, but close. Every time I see these nodes line up in these lunar mansions with what we call a Kalasara Yoga, which is precisely what we've got happening from New Year's Eve forward all the way up to March 26th. I'm telling you, weird stuff happens in the world. The unprecedented, strange things happen. Why? Because the moon's north node is known as time or Kala Purusha. The south node is known as liberation of karma, or what they call how you escape from Alcatraz out of the reincarnational cycles in this world. This gets into some really cool stuff. They say we keep reincarnating on Earth to dissipate, purify, and rectify the soul. In fact, if anybody thinks I'm crazy, here, I'll show you a little text that you can go ponder sometime. This is one of my favorite texts that was completely thrown out by the Western religions. The Share Hagilgam, or Shar-Ar. Shar-Ar means gate, and Hagilgam means cycling of the souls. And they talk specifically in here about how many of us will come here and we have total free will. We can help people, we can heal people, we can kill them, we can do whatever we want, right? Got free will. And the karmic energies known as elementals stick with us. And this is pretty heavy duty spiritual stuff, but here I'll show you one of my favorite diagrams that I always love to show people. If I can find a doggone thing, where is it here? Well, we'll go to this diagram right here. It's in here. This is one of my favorite diagrams that supports this. See, this big, thick dashed line is kind of the demarcation between what modern psychologists or psychiatrists might call the conscious mind below here. And the upper portion above the line could be analogous to the subconscious mind. But a better metaphor might be this is the present reality and personality that we all have. See, mind control experts know this stuff. It's known in Hebrew as the nefesh. The nefesh means the lower impressionable, silly putty conscious mind. You ever use silly putty when you were a little kid? You stick it on a newspaper and you look at it. Oh, man. Yeah. See, that's how your mind works. Yeah, exactly. It's just like if you watch Hate Orange Man News enough, also known as CNN, you will see that the concept, you know, this show's going to get banned. This show's gone. It's gone. Get on. Anyways, but it's true. And see, they've known this for a long, long time. If you tell somebody something is true, even if it's not, they will believe it. And you only have to support it with just repetitive affirmations. It doesn't have to be true.
Yeah, it just has enough times and people will believe it.
They'll believe it. And see, what's interesting is that's also known as the impressionability of the lower nefesh, which in Hebrew means the lower conscious mind. Well, notice all these things are built up of what modern psychology would call your mind. You have reason, you have logic, you have an ego, you have a sense of self, right? That always wants to survive. You have the blessings on the soul, the life force energy of the soul, which science can't even explain. When someone dies, ask a doctor, well, what just left? Well, his heart rate. Well, he's not breathing. Okay. Yeah, but can you explain why they were? Well, because their heart was pumping. Well, that doesn't explain life. It doesn't explain breath. See, that's known as spirit. Even though I'm to all the doctors' credit, they know a lot about anatomy, but no one can explain the magic of life. It's so magical and blessed. And when that spirit vacates the body, they can defibrillate you, they can jump up and down on you and do whatever they want. The spirit's gone. You can't bring that person back. You might be able to keep the meat alive, pumping it full of air and oxygen, but you're not gonna have a soul in there. The head's gone, the consciousness is gone. So the point is, that's what's in this model. See, the Rosh is known as the spirit. Well, this up here is a strange word known as Neshma and the worlds of the universe called Yetzirah. So we keep reincarnating on Earth until we dissipate the karma. That's why Saturn's glyph is the cross over the crescent of the moon, because it's previously concretized energies, karmas, beliefs, etc. And there's an old saying, stiff-necked in this world, you be stiff-necked in the next. And I think that's absolutely true. And that's why a lot of the truths that the religions and the spiritual people do teach are absolutely right. It's what frees us. Hatred, control, all these things bind us to the physical worlds. Not that the physical worlds are bad, but that's the philosophies behind us, and it's profound. So going back to today, the moon's nodes. See, notice this little. I colored it in red. That's the moon's north node where eclipses happen, and the
green one's the south.
And that's right. And see, you can see here's a model. In fact, NASA uses the same one. This is the sun. And of course, here's the Earth orbiting around the sun 1 year, what we call a year, right? And the monthly orbit of the moon. Well, the moon's orbit, and also if you look at the angularity of the Earth is literally sitting at a 24 degree, I think it's a 23 degree, 44-minute angle. Now that's disputable, but they say that's about what it is. And many people have reported that magnetic north has been drastically changing. They actually had to adjust GPS for it.
Right.
If we get, you can see here's the celestial equator at this angle. That's why we have seasons. The only reason it gets cold in the northern hemisphere right now, going to the winter solstice, is because of this angularity. And of course, in the summer, the sun appears north, and it gets, we have to change our clocks. So here's this very simple stuff. Everybody knows this. But what's so important about this Monday, by the way, folks, is it's happening when on the literal
winter solstice.
And everyone knows how powerful of a point that is. That's where the sun appears to stand still for about 3 days, approximately. It doesn't seem to move in the southern sky, and just like the summer solstice does the same thing. So the fact that this Jupiter Saturn is happening precisely on it, but more importantly on the United States Pluto, really is huge. And isn't it interesting that never before we had a disputed election with this many people believing it was fraudulent, this much evidence, and then people going with stardust into our face and going, yes, but the election was true and it's Biden, the president-elect. And we're all supposed to just, take the neuralizer, believe it, and walk away and go, yeah, he's president. So, square-eyed. And I don't think it's going to happen. I think, again, I could be wrong. I mean, if I'm wrong, I'll be the one to admit it. I'm wrong. But if the astrology and the interrogations are right, you're going to see hell come to breakfast here. I think you're going to really see some turmoil over this and some massive, massive disputes coming right up. And could it be military? Yes, it could. It could be, though, internalized here. That's more what I see. Not China, UN, but more an internal necessity that by the way, a lot of people will say to me, yeah, but this could never happen. Trump's a dictator or whatever. Okay, fine. So you think he's a dictator. A lot of people say that. Look at this right here. Let me show you this. I think it was, where is he? Right there. It was Thomas Jefferson invoked the Insurrection Act. I think he signed it in 1807 to foil a plot. Again, on the presidency. And, they'll call Trump a dictator, Hitler, of course, they already do. But I think even if it wasn't Trump, I think any conscious-minded American would want at least their future elections to be trusted.
Right. Right.
And might want to hang on to the Constitution besides, shelf paper or a museum piece.
Mm-hmm.
It's a profound document.
Oops.
I think we're going to see that come to pass, my friend. I really do. I think we're going to see. Here's another interesting thing, as long as we're screen sharing. Joe Biden, this is Joe Biden's location astrology. Very interesting. This is Washington, D.C., right here. I've renamed, they call it District of Columbia. I call it District of Criminals. But right there, that little circle is the DC, and Biden has a Uranus descending line here, and that's a very interesting energy. But by transit, notice up here it says his natal chart, and clients love this because I tell people where to go get good energies to live. I've even had people have their health improved by going living. And doctors have said to me, Jeff, where could I live? That would be good for me.
Right. Your sanctuary.
Yeah, or energetically too.
Yeah.
And so many people are moving now with this whole COVID, collapse of their lives. Here, watch this. So right now, what we are looking at is a transit chart. Let me just show you something. This is Neptune. Neptune is the crescent of the moon over the cross. And watch this. Neptune was stationing right over the District of Criminals between November 23rd and the first part. Look, you can actually, if people eyeball it, they can see it going backwards and then forwards as the dates. You can see the dates right here. So watch, it's now moving away. See that? And people will say to me, well, okay, cool. What does that mean? Well, the general meaning of Neptune is confusion and delusion. Some people liken it to a mirage. See, this is a Neptune IC line. It's on its fourth house. A sense of confusion surrounds affairs along this line. You see, in other words, it may not be all that it seems to be. And even though I know he's standing at the podium in front of CNN, with rice being thrown at him and rose petals at his feet, literally, I would say this is going to slip away, this illusion, by the middle of January.
Did you say illusion or delusion?
His illusion or delusion, his illusion of this. Yeah. I mean, I could be wrong, but I'll tell you what, this is classic. A lot of people have said, yeah, but what's Trump like? Well, look at Trump's chart.
By the way, you've just become the new hashtag, what was it? District of Criminals. People are hashtagging that now.
Yeah. That's a great name for that. A friend of mine who just passed away, and I used to call it that all the time. He was a great guy, Creighton. Anyways, Donald Trump's chart. This is his birth chart. See, whenever you guys see natal up there, that means it's your birth chart. You can see, why is Trump so not only into the military, but also had a life in Washington, D.C. that seems to be just a little bit short of a battlefield. Okay, to anyone who's heard of the inverse square law, that's how these work. These planets literally have a 300-mile influence to the east and about 1,000-mile influence to the west. And if you've ever been around light and sound calculations, it's inversely proportional to the square of the distance, which is a fancy term that just means it's logarithmic. The closer it gets, the more powerful it is, the farther away it gets, the weaker. Now, just FYI, if you're within maybe 50 miles of this, if you guys have ever gone to a concert and stood up in front of the band at the stage, your pant legs are vibrating. That's the kind of intensity we're talking about. Going 100 miles away is like going into the middle row of the concert hall. Very loud, but not like it was standing in front of the speakers, right? Mm-hmm. And then when you get at the end of the concert hall, that's like being maybe 200 miles away. 300 miles to the east is like going out in the parking lot, closing the door, and you hear the band booming inside. But it's there, but it's not that loud. So this is so intense for Donald Trump. He has a Mars ascending line. Hence, the guy has indefatigable energy. Now, I know a lot of people hate Orange Man and the big hair and all that, but I could tell you this guy has one of the more powerful charts I've seen. And in Vedic astrology, his Mars being right next to the District of Criminals actually gives him the ability to fight these guys. And I could tell you, Biden does not have that. When you look at Biden's chart, you could see he's got this Neptune transit there, but most importantly, he has, let me get my computer here to work. He has the Uranus descending line, which is kind of kooky. I don't like that. Uranus, whenever you see the DS nomenclature, that means it's on the 7th house or rules partnerships and relationships. So, and again, everyone remembers Barack Obama used to bust on Joe. If anybody could screw something up or F something up, Joe could. Remember, Obama's quoted on camera of saying that.
Right.
Plus Joe has a Saturn descending line. Now, people might say, well, that's way out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Guess what? When you measure from the District of Criminals out to this, you can actually see, look up here, folks, that's miles and kilometers. So when I measure, he's only about 300, maybe 20, 30 miles west of that line. When you're west of that, that's a strong influence. These go up to like 1,000 miles or 1,200 miles to the west. Washington is not my favorite place for Joe. But then again, who am I to tell Joe where to live or what to do? That's for China to do. I'm sorry, for someone else to do. But I would say, sorry, I blew up. But anyhow, in all seriousness, not good. I looked at also Kamala's chart, President Kamala, because if she gets in, she will be.
Well, that's what Siri says.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah,
I couldn't believe that. Can you believe? Oh my God.
Well, that program they turned it off the third eye program, so it would go in.
Kamala's chart's actually not too bad for here. It really isn't. She has the sun, the moon, and Mercury right off the coast, which is a strong influence on the DC area. So she's good. She's actually not bad there. And then there's also these, we call them geometric aspects, which has to be taken into account. And by the way, this can be done for anyone. Anyone can have their location astrology, and it's amazingly accurate. I got to say, just reading for that alone is amazing. I mean, I have studied since the 70s. This stuff came out about the late 70s is when I first started getting into location astrology. And I thought, come on, does this stuff really work? And then I'll never forget, I was in Racine, Wisconsin on a Moon-Mars line, and a guy stuck a double-barrel shotgun in my face right when I said to the lady I was sitting in the car with, I'm sitting on a Moon-Mars line. This is not a good place for me. Bam! Guy knocks on the window of the car with a double-barrel shotgun. I went, what, are you married? And then I got up. So I got out of the car. She was in the driver's seat. I was just sitting in the car talking to her.
Yeah.
And I got up, stood up, and the guy says, give me your money. So I threw the wallet on the ground. He picks it up and runs away, had a stocking over his face. And I'm telling you, man, I almost grabbed that gun, but if he'd have let it go, it'd have been good night, Irene. So anyways, that's, I can tell you, I have seen so many clients have said, these horizontal lines are what we call latitude crossings. In fact, you could see up here where I'm highlighting, that's latitude. And if you place it right on it, see, like Kamala has a Venus node line, that's the horseshoes again, at 39 North 11. So that's actually a good spot for her. A little bit north of the District of Criminals, but not much. So, but it's actually, I mean, if she actually does get in, I can tell you, not a bad spot for her. And California wasn't either. And of course, we know that's where she came from. Not as good, though. Not as good, but it's all right. So anyways, this is a little picture of what's going on. She had Kamala, if she gets in, which I don't think she's going to, but if she does, she ain't going to have a good time in a few years because she's got Pluto and Saturn and Jupiter with Saturn's coming in. So it will be a little bit dicey. Oops, I hit the wrong darn button. There we go. Where's Kamala? There she is. So yeah, you can see, if I, this is what's fun. You can animate this for each individual. You can see she's got a Pluto descending line coming in. I can tell you who's ever going to be president of the United States over the next 3-4 years, it ain't going to be easy. We're in some trying times, and I really believe that the propaganda law that was passed, and even though people dispute that, Obama passed it. It was actually to use propaganda psyops, not only in the media, but entertainment, social media, etc. People can look that up. It's HR 34 and it's section, I think it was 1078. And it's very disputable, but I have never in my entire life seen the media make an attack, not just on the policy, but on the character of an individual like this. Now, that doesn't mean you got to like Donald Trump or hate him, but it's just been unprecedented that the United States of America would have that kind of machine going against its political leader, whether you like him or not. And it has created so much dissension. And that's why no matter what the outcome of this election, the astrology shows the next couple of years, I'd say the next 3-4 years, is going to be really tenuous because of the division that has been supplanted subconsciously in this country. It's really created a lot. And, that reminds me of, on the playground. Remember when we were little kids?
Yeah, playgrounds.
Yeah. And the big guy, if you couldn't beat the big guy, the little guy would, have his friends throw sand in his eyes, or, you come up behind him and kick him and knee him and I'll get him. Of course, I never did. I was always fighting the bullies. But I would say that's kind of a little bit what's been happening to the United States. It's like, we know we can't beat her in an iron war, but let's infiltrate her. Let's infiltrate her colleges, her schools, her educators, her law enforcement. Not so much law enforcement, but you could say the FBI, the DOJ, and the political systems, and also the legal systems. It's unprecedented what we've seen in this country.
Like a Trojan horse.
Thank you. We have the perfect Trojan horse inside our walls.
Mm-hmm.
It's the technology and the money sellout that's been going on. George Carlin, who gave his little skit called The American Dream. I don't think I go by George's office all the time in Brentwood. And I always look up, I go, George, we need you, man. You got to come back.
So bad.
God, yeah. I loved him. He was so funny.
He was brilliant, and he was straight up. He was a straight shooter.
You have no idea. I'm on the air right now. If I could tell you some of the stuff he would come up with when I was in front, I just went, what? I mean, the guy was. I mean, I would have loved to have given George Carlin an IQ test. He would have rung the bell. I did a recording for him. I actually met George working on a movie soundtrack, and his daughter, Kelly, and his office manager, Ross Davis, owned a recording studio. And I was recording in it. And I said to the studio guy, I said, this place could sound a little better. He goes, yeah, I know. He said, we wanted to modify it. And I said, well, that's what I do. I do that on the side. So I modify microphones and stuff and studio consoles. So he said, well, I got to talk to the owner, which was Kelly and George. And that's how I met George. And so I got to record George once in the studios, probably like 2000. What was it? It's probably 2003 or something like that, 2002, because he died in 2008. And I was so excited because the studio manager said, Jeff, George wants to do a recording. I actually designed a microphone for George. It was one of those Johnny Carson mics. It really was cool. I put silver in it and polystyrene caps and all this stuff. So the cool thing was I got to record him. He says, George wants to do a recording and you got to go in the studio and do it. I said, twist my arm, So I go in there and George and I were having coffee with Ross. We're drinking, and George, he's got his baseball hat, and he goes, he says, I got a plan to catch this. Let's get this done. I said, okay. So I go in this recording booth, and George is in front of the microphone, and he turns his head backwards, his hat backwards, and he says, let's do a mic check. So being it's George Carlin, I knew, this guy don't need rehearsals. Take it. So I hit the record button. I got the levels perfect. He just went off, and it was so funny. I was laughing so hard I could almost not see the meters, and because he's funny, he's just funny. So he got done, he looks up at me and he goes, did you by any chance take that? I said, yeah. He goes, good, give me the tape, I got to get the hell out of here. Boom. And that was it. I said, bye, George, nice working with you. I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, it's what a great experience.
Wow.
And, he, for anybody who's seen him, he's just like that in person. I remember when I first met George, what a pensive review he gave me. He just looked me right in the eye, just checked me out. I'm like, wow, I just got scanned, by a genius. And he's like that, and I really miss him. He was such a great guy. I rode on a plane from Chicago to L.A. once with him, and what a character, man! What a character!
Wow. Yeah. Well, speaking of greats that have passed, someone has. There's been a lot of questions, and I'm sorry, folks, that I haven't been able to get to them all. Of course, there's been a lot of discussion going on in the chat room, but the question that jumped out was JFK Jr. Is he around? I mean, we have his family members, doing little finger gestures in interviews. People saying, "Give us a finger gesture if he's still alive," and they're doing it. I mean, we were told he was going to be out on the 17th of October and make the big hoopla. Here I am, and it didn't happen. So for me and many others, what's your thoughts, or have you ever looked into it with JFK Jr.?
Have from this standpoint, Camille really follows Q a lot, and I've cast an interrogation on it twice. I had a client ask, and I also had Camille ask. And I know I've seen all the documentaries. Oh, we found the plane, the seats, and the bones, and everybody was down there and all that. It kind of leans towards it might be true that he could, in fact, be Q. And I know that sounds crazy to most logical people, but on the other hand, I've seen the likenesses in the crowds at the rallies and all that. And again, I'm not one to make a judgment. I can only tell you what the astrology says, and it leans towards it may be true.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, a lot of us hope so.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I hope for this country. And again, I know a lot of folks love Donald Trump. A lot of people hate Donald Trump. And, that's something really cool to talk about, too, is Donald Trump's chart. Donald Trump was actually born during the Kalasara Yoga, but the moon broke it literally, if Donald Trump would have been born, I think 38 or 40 minutes earlier, he would have had a full Kalasara Yoga. The moon broke it. And every person I've ever seen with that condition in Vedic astrology has a really important incarnation, really fated, powerful destiny in life. And Donald Trump has Mars. It's called Raj Yoga. It's a strange word that means Mars rules any planet that rules one of the angles. Angles is sunrise, noon, sunset, and midnight, which are the four stakes, right? We all know when it's sunrise. We all know when it's noon. We all know when it's sunset. We all know when it's midnight. You can feel those energies. So those are known in astrology as the angles or stakes. And anytime you have a planet that has a rulership on one of those points or one of the trines, which is 1, 5, and 9, it creates a condition that's very powerful. It's called Raj Yoga, but it's very powerful for the individual. Donald Trump has Mars right in the ascendant. You also saw just a minute ago, I was showing you in the location astrology, Donald Trump's Mars is right over the District of Criminals. I'm sorry, Washington, D.C. And what happened is he really can offend people. And plus he's Leo rising in Vedic astrology. And what rules Leo? The sun. Where is it? In the 10th house. He has the chart of an emperor. And that really, I think, angers a lot of people. I think they hate it. I think a lot of it is underlying jealousy. They dislike this man so vehemently. And I think he also has defied this whole new one world order direction. And again, I've never lived under communism, and I certainly don't want to, but I've talked to people who have, like told you, Vilmos and Laszlo, especially Laszlo, I got to talk to about that. And they don't like it. And I've got clients who've come from those places, and they say that, like the COVID thing, I had one guy from Russia. He says, you got to go to live in Russia. He said, you know exactly what's going on right now. And I said, really? He said, oh yeah. He said, this is the same kind of games they play all the time over there. And, different, but similar. And, I think if the astrology is right, to kind of bring this to conclusion, I think next week is a trigger unlike I've never seen on this country. And And I hope it is a transformative, positive one to where, forget Trump, forget Biden, that we can get honesty to come through and not end up in socialism. Because, it's like George Carlin said. He said, forget the politicians. You have owners. They own this place. And if you ever watch his American Dream, he was so spot on. Remember, he said, you got to be asleep to believe it. That's why they call it the American Dream. And he was right on because he talked about the quote unquote deep state, the big wealthy business interests and the media, the big club, and we ain't in it, and beating you over the head, and I really think this is now what's on the chopping block. And the astrology says, we're here, man. We're here. We're here. and I think we're living in the most extraordinary times. I'm going to make what I think is going to happen, a prediction. I think we're going to get through this. I think it's going to be very challenging to get through, but it's going to be really good to get through when it's all said and done. I really think that this election is going to be contested, and it's not going to be taken lightly. It's going to really be tumultuous, but I think we're going to get through it.
Fantastic. Well, that's a lot of stuff.
See what happens.
Yeah.
See what happens.
And I think it's the uncertainty that drives people nuts.
Yeah. And I can sympathize. Everybody, is feeling this. I really think the generals are telling him, and I've heard some very, very powerful stuff is going up at the top of the pyramid right now. He'll be declared. I wouldn't be surprised if you see a lot of this stuff that everybody's been mocking. Oh, we thought Durham was going to come through last year, and this and that and this and that, and everybody was going to be put in chains, and everybody's going to be arrested, and Guantanamo is going to be filled. That may be happening over the next year or two. It may take that long. I predict with the astrology that's going on, it is probably going to happen. And I think the commencement, whether we hear it on the media or not, starts next week. We're in it right now.
Wow. Well,
and the first of the year forward, boom,
Yeah. So can I have you back again?
Yeah, sure.
I learned a lot tonight. About the moons and the north and south, and I actually retained some stuff tonight. I'm impressed with myself for remembering all. So
I can tell you'll never figure all this out. This is beyond human comprehension. I'm very blessed to have had some great teachers, and I get to study a lot, and it's really, really a blessing to me to be able to study all this stuff and have all the books that I have. And the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know, and no one will ever know. It's very divine.
Right.
This planet it's got its challenges. Everybody's complaining. I'm complaining. Everybody complains. It's not an easy place to be, but it's also a really divine place to be. And it proves we are spiritual beings having a physical experience, in my opinion, beyond question.
Do you see that this, whatever, in the next 10 days or week, do you think it's going to give us some growth?
Oh, unquestionably. Yeah. And I think it's going to shock a lot of people what comes out of all of this. I really do. I mean, there's been some really nasty stuff that has happened from what I've heard. A lot of strong arming. I mean, when you're dealing on this kind of level, there's been a lot of, I think, coercion that has been going on and will probably continue to go on. That's why, I mean, I really believe these maps are true. I think they have moved this military hardware around. I think that there is this kind of military movement. I said this on another show. People would say, how could they get Trump to go to 5 rallies a day and protect him? These people hate him. How could they not shoot him? Even though hundreds of thousands love him. Okay.
Right.
If you remember the movie Eraser back in the 90s, I hear they've got something called electromagnetic spectrometry, infrared spectrometry. It's very complex. I don't fully understand, but they can literally see. Oh, by the way, I should tell you this too. I was just up at Port Hume. I've got a truck I'm working on up there. And I went by one of the Air Force bases, naval bases,
Okay.
and I have never seen as many AWACS coming in and out of that base. I was on my motorcycle. I went by the first time. I saw 2 coming in, 2 coming out. And then I had to turn around because I forgot something. And I went back and I saw a bunch more. I saw like a dozen different radar planes.
Yeah, and for those that don't know what AWACS are, that's the plane with the big round disc.
That's right.
Right. It's like a aerial headquarters.
That's
right.
Right.
They control missions from that.
It's plane. A flying radar station.
Yeah,
and it's a flying radar station. I never saw so many in my life, and I've been by there a lot. And this was just recently, just in the last week. And then I went to my destination. I came back and I figured, well, there was just, shift change. Maybe they're, coming in for a shift change. The same thing was going on. Planes, you could see them all coming in and circling around. I'm like, wow. And this is just radar stuff. And that's one little place that I saw. So something heavy duty's going on because I've never seen that before up there. Never. Wow. And I've been there a lot of times. And so there's some heavy duty stuff that's happening right now. And back to that spectrometry story, I hear they can actually see like ants crawling under your refrigerator. Like if someone's in a building along the route that Trump was going, or somebody they got to watch, they can see if they're in there loading a gun from a plane, from a satellite, from a van. They can see, a mile away. They can see everybody in everything. They can zoom in on it and everything. And like of course they scanned everybody, I'm sure, going into these rallies, but they would be able to literally have equipment that would see anything going on in and around the entire environment. Like if somebody's doing suspicious movements or they've got an object in there, they can tell. And this kind of technology could also be used, and this is why the only reason I brought this up. If we get unrest and they bring in the military, like I think they're doing, you're not going to talk about, I'm not demeaning the police because I have great respect for the police. And God, we defund them, it'll be like Escape from New York. It'll be
Mad Max.
It'll be Mad Max, yeah. And I can tell you, I think they're going to utilize this kind of technology to keep the streets safe. I really think some kind of martial law, military action is going to have to be utilized to keep things calm, because there will be a lot.
It'll be an impactful event, or do you think it's going to be subtle to where, like the boiling of a frog? With people, it's going to happen.
I don't know. The charts show more of the boiling of a frog. The charts show more the boiling of a frog. Okay. I get more that things are probably going to be very intense, but it's going to be flare-ups, riots here and there, and unrest. But I think they'll put it out pretty fast. That's what I think. The military, that's a whole nother world, man. Those boys got some toys, and they've got crowd control equipment, psychotronic weapons. They've got stuff that works acoustic. Heavy duty stuff.
L.R.A.D. is what I'm scared of.
But in a way, isn't that better than watching your cities burn again?
Yeah, or people getting shot up.
Or shot up, right?
Yeah.
And that's probably, that could happen. We could see a lot of unrest for a while, but I think, this is, not to sound gross, it's like the country's having a big bowel movement, and if this doesn't happen, it's going to keep, it's like when you get a bad stomach ache, sometimes it's just got to happen, and I think that's what the astrology shows, is we're at a crisis point par excellence that we've never been at, in a different way than we've ever been. This is really some high-tech infiltration, as well as just plain old infiltration through the politicians, through the, real key control points of this country. And I think it's the New World Orders in concert with China. I really do. And Russia. They really want to use that as a model.
Mm-hmm. I just don't understand their mind mechanics on how that is the way to go. What is so appealing to it, other than maybe control of the masses if they're in the right position? But
look at Hitler. You look at Mao. everybody talks about Hitler because all the movies were made, but and of course, horrible what those people did. And remember, Hitler didn't do it on his own. He had a lot of people helping him and a whole army of people that he mind controlled. That's the nefesh again. You tell them something and get them to believe it, and they'll do it.
They will believe it. Yeah.
Yeah. Same thing. I mean, look at China, and then you look at what Mao did. I mean, they say close to 100 million people were slaughtered. Look at Stalin. And if you go back through time, all these emperors, Genghis Khan, I mean, this is nothing new. This is nothing.
This is where you have a lot of people say all those people were lizard people, because how would a human being have it within them to do a mass genocide of millions of people like Mao or Hitler?
It's horrible.
I mean, they got to not be human, right? And maybe that's where people lean to that.
I think they're possessed too. I really do.
Yes.
There's demonic forces. If you go back to that diagram that I showed before, I'll show you. There's a lot more to be gleaned in that little diagram that meets the eye when you look at this one right here. Where did I put it? Well, it's going to be in here somewhere. Yeah, here it is. If you look at, everyone, we usually get somebody with a suit and a tie and a microphone going, the devil did it, right? But it's a little bit more than the devil. If you look at Lucifer, Satan, Belial, and Leviathan are the 4 cast down sub-princes. They say there's 8 beneath those. I could go name them for you, but I'd rather not. And then there's legions upon legions upon legions. So even if someone believes or disbelieves the biblical story, I believe it's true. And what's interesting is these demonic forces are literally here, and they seem to be mixed in with Asaya, the whole astral planes down to the earth.
Wow.
And they have caused great havoc. Malachi Martin, who I really had great respect for, he had met with M. Scott Peck, who was the psychiatrist many people may recognize from The Road Less Traveled. Remember him? And he was really amazing. He was a psychiatrist, yeah. And he also wrote People of the Lie. And when he was writing the book, People of the Lie, Malachi Martin, who was an exorcist for the church, met with him. And he said, they are trying to kill me. And he says, well, what do you mean they? He says, the people in the church. He says, it is infiltrated with demonic forces. And we hear all this stuff about, child trafficking and adrenochrome and sacrifices and all this horrible, horrible, horrible stuff, which, by the way, Donald Trump has done a lot to, and he's gotten zero credit or even acknowledgement.
Fighting it.
To stop. And there's some pretty hideous stuff going on this planet, and has been forever. You hear about Moloch, and you hear about all these things. I mean, there's sacrifices that went on in the land of Israel a long time ago. That's where we got the Moloch thing. They were throwing babies into fires and sacrifice. I mean, this stuff has been going on a long time. Look at back in Chaldea and Egypt and some of this really dangerous magic people have been playing with. And you wonder, well, okay, how could this be true? I've had I used to do forensics work back in the 80s and the early 90s. And I had agents and guys and sheriffs telling me, we know that there's satanic rituals going on in certain religious organizations. I said, you got to be kidding. He said, no. He said, we know. I said, really? And I looked into a little bit of it, not a lot, but I can tell you, doing astrology over the years, I have seen in Vedic astrology, I had one girl, I've had several actually, different people who I've seen in the Vedic astrology. I'm like, oh my God, what happened to you during this time in your life? And the tears come down. You wouldn't believe it. I said, try me, I might. And again, this isn't my anything. You study Vedic astrology, you will see the amazing divine heights that a soul can achieve in this world and the extremely sad depths that can happen. It's all going on Earth. And she was involved. They literally got her pregnant at 13 years old, and they made her sacrifice her baby. And I'm not even going to tell you, it was one of her family members. It was her father. And some very powerful people in the community were involved. And I've seen this several times when certain progressions and doshas lined up in the chart. Now, most people, none of us, on average will experience it, and I pray we don't. But there are some folks, you wonder, why would that happen? And I got to tell you, there's great mysteries to the angelic court that seems to incarnate us. They actually say the guardian angel attaches the soul to the embryo at conception, not at birth. And the 9 months or whatever it is, gestation, we're in the womb. We are literally in that converse. And they say when we exit the womb at first breath is when the spirit, psyche, and soul is tied to the body permanently for the duration of the life. And that mark we have right here is the mark to make us forget. That's actually in the Sefer Haggadah, which is known as the Book of Legends. And I don't think it's legend. I think it's true. I actually witnessed that with my son, and I didn't expect it. I literally saw 2 spheres come in and join right when he cried. And I just went, oh, my God. I just witnessed what I've heard about. And I wasn't even expecting it. My wife was shaking from an epidural and, whole delivery room drama. And then when that happened, I just went, oh my God. I mean it was so magical. And he reached up and grabbed my thumbs and I went, okay, Belle, hello again. It's like, wow. Yeah. So as hideous as this world can get, it's also as divine as it can get too.
Right. Well, I want to talk more about all of that as well, but on an upcoming show, if you're willing, I think the audience, if you've been looking at the chat room, you have been like killing it. Everybody is like, holy crap, this is the show to watch. And they're like talking about, what, cool. Listen to you. I think you got a whole bunch of new fans. So let me do this real quick. Can you tell everybody how they can find out more about you, or do you have a website, books, anything
yeah. The easiest way to get to me,
pull that up, you can share the page.
Yeah, is Jeff at jeffharman.com. Here, I'll show you if I can get my computer here to work. There we go. Now I gotta end this. And Jeff at jeffharman.com is the easiest way to get through.
And that's HARMAN.
Yeah, MAN.com. Yeah, Jeff at jeffharman.com. JEFFHARMAN.com. Yeah. Camille helps me. And what's so awesome is when I do sessions with people, I do it on Zoom, and you get to record a video of the entire thing. And then I send all the documents, and most people love it because they can watch it on, their iPhones. They can watch it on their computers and over again. The location astrology alone is worth it. Oh my God, it's so amazing. And the Vedic astrology really shows the trigger points in your chart. I got to say, I got into astrology in 1975. It was about then, and I didn't know what I was doing. My mother, I had just begun driving, right? And I'm dating myself here. And I grew up in northern Wisconsin. It was like Dukes of Hazzard up there. It was a lot of fun. And what happened was my mother would start telling me, Jeffrey, that girl, she's not going to work for you. I'm like, how do you know? And then she would say things. And I'm like, this is not mother's intuition. I said, where'd you get this? And she goes, well, I got her chart. I said, what do you mean you got her chart? She goes, well, I got her astrology. I said, come on. I said, that stuff doesn't work, does it? I said, I've heard all the stories. Doctors got more gravity than Saturn does in the delivery room. And she goes, before you knock it, she goes, you better check it out. And my mom was really smart. She was almost a nurse practitioner when she died. She was really great. She was an LPN, RN, and then really got advanced into a lot of different things. And so I started learning it with her, and we thought we were cool. By 1977, 78, we had the Commodore 128. Oh no, we started with the 64. Remember those? The floppy disk.
I remember the Radio Shack. Yeah. The Radio Shack TSR-80 was what I got.
Yeah, there you go.
We went Commodore.
Yeah, and then we got the 128. We thought we were really cool. 128 gigabyte. Kilobyte.
You didn't know what a gig was then.
So by the 80s, I'm on my DOS computers, and I'm going, okay, I'm starting to get this stuff, and I had a studio at the time. I had a recording studio, and everybody would come into my studio. I'd always do their chart. Let me do your chart, So then I would start getting into interrogation horary astrology, probably right in the early 80s, something like that. And it was profound. I was just like, this is so freaking cool. You can't make this stuff up. And people just loved it. And then by the 90s, I was really starting to get into Vedic astrology, late 80s, early 90s. And then it just really caught on by, the mid to late 90s. Like I was really busy. And it's a real blessing for me because I love the help it gives people. It gives them insight, and you can look at things like medical imbalances. I can't do medicine. I can't give medical advice, but I in Ayurvedic astrology, you can see stuff that's just amazing. Absolutely astounding.
Well, maybe we could get into some of that as well, because, like you said, there's
clearing properties. I do a lot of that stuff where I clear homes for people and get rid of like stuff, entities, and properties like people. So I had one judge once. He said to me, "Listen, I'm a judge, so you can't tell anybody I'm telling you this." And of course, I'm not saying where he is or where he was. This was many years ago. But he says, I thought my wife and the maids were crazy. He said, we had a ghost in here. And he says, his wife said, and he says, you women are crazy, right? And then all of a sudden he experienced, oh my God, you're right. This is crazy. And this howling and weird stuff. So I actually cleared the place I use astrology to pick auspicious times at which to clear it. And he actually gave me a paper and I was able to go in there and clear it and did a bunch of stuff and it cleared. This stuff works.
Wow. Amazing. Wow. I want to hear about that. It goes to later, but I'm gonna wrap this up, and
all right, bud.
I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed like everybody else through this week.
We're in it, man. Yeah. We are alive and probably one of the most. We're gonna look back at this someday and go, "Wow."
This is gonna be kind of like our World War II, like that generation that dealt with that's of course it's not World War II. I'm just saying it was such an impact on that generation. This is going to be the impact on this generation.
I think China and Russia would come in here in a New York second if they thought they could.
Yeah.
I really do. And if our military wasn't built up, and again, I know a lot of people like Biden, but I'm telling you, if he gets in, he will gut this military. He'll open the back door, and we will be in a position we do not want to be within a very short amount of time. We will.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, dude, it is.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me.
And what's so cool is this is on the air, so people got to join.
All right.
Great. I'm bringing you back. I don't know when, but let's get through the new year, and then maybe do something on how maybe 2021.
Happy New Year.
You too.
Everybody meditate, pray, because I'll tell you what, that matters too. Your intentions really matter. They actually say we emit third eye chakra elementals. So our thoughts, just like Dr. Emoto showed, they really have power. Yeah.
Yeah, words are also very, very powerful. So
you bet.
This is, I've been on a roll with guests the last couple of days, and you just put a cherry on top.
Oh, well, thank you. That's very kind.
We'll have you back. And hold on. I'll talk to you after I shut down, but I'm going to do my goodbyes real quick. So let me do that. I want to say thank you to each and every one of you that joined us tonight in this special report this Saturday night. I want to thank my sponsors, Jag Swag, Sweet Pea CBD Infusion Cafe, and of course, the Lodge Bar and Grill located at Pine Top, 857 East White Mountain Boulevard, Pine Top, Arizona. Oh, man, I love you all. Thank you so much for hanging out with us this Saturday night. And you're getting out early, so enjoy a movie. Go out and have some dinner.
You can't. You got to have a mask.
Well, yeah, with a mask, of course. Right.
So I'm going to be a spacesuit.
Yeah. Until next time, everybody, please remember, as long as we all lift each other up, we will all rise together.
There you go, bud.
My name is Doc Skinner. This is 1028 Live, broadcasting from the beautiful White Mountains of Arizona here in these United States on this gigantic spaceship round, that is, a planet we call Earth, hurtling through space, chasing a gigantic ball of fire. Until next time, America and the world, I should say humans, not America because it's a worldwide show. Lord willing, I will see you again Monday when everything is aligned. Yes. I'm going to go outside and do some filming too, see if I can catch anything with my Psionics color night vision camera. So you got one, pull it out, send me the video, and we'll put it on the show. Till then, I'm out. You know me, long goodbyes. I'm really bad at it. Goodbye.